Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. I had originally planned for this video to basically just be me talking about each starter that I had throughout my many journeys in Pokemon, but then it slowly evolved into me remembering things about each game I've played, and just kind of getting a little bit more nostalgic about everything. So I think that's really what this is ultimately going to be, because I wrote out a bunch of stuff, and now I'm just going to read it, basically. So the first Pokemon game I technically ever played and owned was Pokemon Yellow, and that was a thing. Honestly, I don't have too much to talk about in terms of that, because I didn't really play it much. I was too young to really understand what was going on. I had Pikachu in my party and I didn't really get the mechanics right away. And then I hit Brock, and then that doesn't really work well with Pikachu. So I really just kind of gave up. Technically, it was my first Pokemon game, but honestly, I don't really consider it my first Pokemon game. What I do consider my first Pokemon game was Pokemon Silver. It was honestly the thing that really got me into it, and this was maybe a year or so after I had quit playing Pokemon Yellow. I ended up getting Pokemon Silver from my brother. He originally had it and had transferred all of his Pokemon from Pokemon Blue over to it, and it was really his prized possession at the time because he had his favorite Pokemon at the time, at least, Mewtwo. That was until my sister had decided to play it and accidentally overread his entire save, and that really had kind of ruined Pokemon for him. Ever since then, he has basically tried to play, and then he starts and gets about halfway, and he says, oh yeah, that's good. So I'm really hoping for the day that he eventually comes back around. Either way, this was my turning point for Pokemon. It was really when I first started getting into it, and I just loved it ever since. I put easily over 200 hours into it, and I remember the moment that it happened. I was on vacation down in South Carolina, and I remember being like, yo, I just saved over 200 hours. And my brother basically said, hey, that's a lot of hours. Wow, you're playing that a lot. But I remember playing it on the beach, and that was probably not the smartest idea since I was a kid, and, you know, sand and technology. But I just enjoyed it so much. I honestly, other than my starter, couldn't tell you who I started with. I started with Cyndaquil, and that was my favorite of the three, and honestly, it's my favorite Pokemon overall. The love that I had for that Cyndaquil originally has transcended many generations, and while I do have love for many Pokemon, Cyndaquil and its evolutions really just do it for me all over. One final memory I have of Pokemon Silver is that I remember going to a family fishing trip and having one of my cousins, he had Action Replay, and I ended up getting Celebi from that because I turned an Oddish into it, and I remember it just being really interesting to have that kind of mechanic, and obviously I was never going to get Celebi back then myself, so I figured, hey, why not? The next Pokemon game I played was Pokemon Red. I actually backtracked because at that point I was finally willing to give it a try, and I was mentally a little bit more mature, and I knew exactly what I was doing at that point. I actually started in the 3rd grade, and I remember playing it in recess and in between lectures, or lessons rather, in class with my friends, and it was just overall really cool. I think the biggest memory that I have from it is going into the Safari Zone at Fuchsia City and just spending hours there trying to catch every single Pokemon. It was a really interesting experience after having played so many hours in Silver. The original games aren't necessarily my favorite or even close to my favorite games, but I do have a soft spot for them. Up to this point, I had played the original 2 generations, and I was hungry for more. I finally got information on the brand new generation that was coming out, Generation 3, and Ruby and Sapphire was really cool. I ended up playing Ruby, and I chose Trico. I remember spending hours putting out prints of all kinds of different Pokemon, and all the art that I found online, as well as going on GameSpot, and basically just spending hours looking at all the pre-release images, and it was just really cool, because it was so interesting and different compared to Generations 1 and 2, especially in terms of graphics. This is honestly the first game that I had actually followed in any capacity up to its release. Prior to that, my ties to Pokemon prior to game releases were the anime and just the overall concept. I really loved Pokemon all through those times, but I hadn't really followed a game pre-release before. So it was a really exciting time for me. I remember putting $5 down to reserve it at GameStop, and I even remember going to get it with my mom. And I even got this cute little coin that came with, and I still have it right now. I remember spending hours playing with my childhood friend in his room and just doing different things and mixing records and getting the Eon ticket together. It was really cool. And like I said, I chose Trico to start, and he actually chose Torchic, so he was my rival, really. Also, that brings me to my next thing. It was the first game I had ever gotten a Pokemon up to level 100, and that was my starter, Sceptile. I was so proud of that Sceptile, and like, this was even beyond, like, I don't even remember if any of my other Pokemon were anywhere near level 100, but I remember getting to that point in the Pokemon League and grinding it out, and I was so proud of myself. And honestly, that makes my next point kind of sad. I unfortunately lost Pokemon Ruby. It might be somewhere in my house, it might be lost somewhere to the void, I have no idea where it is, so it's sad to know that this game out there that I put so many hours into and have a level 100 Sceptile originally was actually lost. And the even sadder part is that I have Sapphires as well, and I still have that cartridge too. Although, honestly, that one, the battery's dead or something because I haven't gotten it to work in years. And that brings us to Generation 4. I have to admit, I'm gonna go through this as quickly as possible. I have strong feelings about Generation 4, specifically Diamond and Pearl and Platinum, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes. You can love it, hate it, whatever you want, but I personally, it's not my favorite generation. I love the Pokemon, I love the characters, and I generally do love the region, and even the story, but I think it's got fundamental flaws that are just not great. So to start out, I started with Piplup. Piplup overall was just so cool to me. I had followed this game from the very beginning once Munchlax was revealed on Kids WB, and then they revealed Mime Jr. and Weavile and all the pre-release Pokemon, and I thought it was super cool. And it was really the first time I had started kind of getting an inkling of like Korokoro and following Pokemon in like more on the fan sites than anything. But it was just really interesting to me, and I loved everything about it all the way up until I started playing. I love the beginning. I remember I have fond memories of playing the very beginning. I used almost every Pokemon that I could find, and my team was basically kind of overlapping. I had 2 or 3 water Pokemon, and it was a really messed up team, honestly. I even remember prior to the game coming out, me going on a hike with my family and pretending that there were Generation 4 Pokemon all over the place. I was super excited for this game, and all the way until I got to more or less the end, I was kind of still pumped for it. My main problems with these games are the story pacing, which I know people say Platinum fixes, but I haven't seen any evidence that it fixes it greatly. I won't focus on that too much though. The next thing I don't really care for is the slow engine. Everything is slow. It becomes a grind just to do like general things. The final thing that I don't care for is the HMs. You can say that every game has some kind of HM block of whatever. Generation 4, specifically the Sinnoh games, was a major offender of this, and honestly I don't know how people can defend it in terms of that. I even stopped playing this game for an entire year before beating it. I got to nearly the end and said, I can't do this anymore. I stopped playing. I needed a long break apparently, and then I beat it and I felt like, okay, I did it. And this really hurts me because I love Pokemon so much. I love almost every single game in the main series at the very least, except for Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. I love everything about it other than the games themselves. That being said, after I beat the game, I actually played it quite a bit. I even got a little bit of an inkling on starting to complete the decks. I never actually finished the decks, but I started using the GTS and I got the starters, and that was basically the start of me trying to fulfill the decks in general. I want to love it, but I can't. I'm hoping the Diamond and Pearl remakes actually make this better for me. I think a lot of the quality of life stuff will uplift it and honestly make it one of my favorite generations in general then, too. Overall, I have a love-hate relationship with it. It is what it is. We'll see where the future goes, though. Now, this video is mostly going to be about initial games: Red, Blue, Gold, Silver, Ruby, Sapphire, Diamond, and Pearl. But there are 3 games that I want to talk about that kind of had a bit of a moment for me, and the first of those 3 is Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I remember learning about this on, I think at one point, I think it was the point that it was Pokemon Sunday, and They revealed it by pulling down a drawstring, a gold and silver ball opened up and revealed that it was remakes of Gold and Silver, and I was ecstatic. Gold and Silver were my first real Pokemon games, and it was amazing to me. And after my issues with Diamond and Pearl, I was ready to move on to something that I knew that I could get my grasp on. It is honestly the most nostalgic game that I can think of right now, as far as like its connection to Gold and Silver, and I just love it so much. It and Gold and Silver, they're not perfect games. They certainly have their issues, especially with the grinding towards the end, and it's not a perfect set of games. However, it does have a perfect nostalgic to it. I just love it for that itself. It's not my favorite games, but it's my favorite nostalgic games. And for these games, I ended up choosing Heart Gold because I wanted to play something opposite to Silver, which was my original playthrough of the other games. And I wanted to also use Cyndaquil again, because it was like I was revisiting an old friend. Obviously, Pokemon from Generation 2 couldn't be brought forward, and even by that point, by the time Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out, my Silver cartridge's battery basically died. So it was really nice to be able to have a new Cyndaquil, a new Typhlosion that was basically my partner, and have him be able to go forward throughout the future of the games, all the way up until, well, now. Either way, Gold and Silver and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they got a place in my heart. Now, I know I said that Heart Gold and Soul Silver and even Gold and Silver were technically my nostalgic favorite. These next are my favorite games of the entire series at this point. And that's Black and White. Technically Black and White too, but we'll get there. But first up, Black. I chose Pokemon Black, and I ended up using Oshawott. And I know Oshawott kind of looks dumb, but I really got sold with his evolutions. But to start off, before that, before we even learned about Oshawott and the starters, we learned about Zoroark, and honestly, I started this generation off a little bit unsure. I saw Zoroark and I thought, oh, that looks cool, but it looks a little too different. I wasn't 100% sure what I was looking at. Then we got Zekrom and Reshiram later on in the year, and that kind of started getting me really excited, and eventually we learned more and more about it throughout the summer, and I was sold. The more I learned about these games, the more I loved it, and I hadn't even played it at that point. I loved the idea that it was just basically a reboot. I mean, soft reboot, but ultimately a reboot where only new Pokemon were in the games, at least up until the post-game, and it was a fresh start for absolutely everybody. I remember watching gameplay footage on YouTube after it released in Japan, and watching some like brief walkthroughs just to kind of get an instance of what it was like, and I was so excited for it. I remember having a little back and forth with myself and being like, well, I want to watch what these people are playing, but at the same time, it's going to be coming out eventually for us, so I don't want to ruin it for myself. Eventually, I got it, and I was just flabbergasted how good it was. The story was amazing, and the gym leaders were cool. I was sold. It's honestly my favorite set of games, along with its sequels, to date at the very least. I remember going up against Enengetzis at the end, and I was so nervous. My palms were sweaty, and I was just so excited to see how this would all end. I was super into this. It's also the first game that I actually completed the Pokédex entirely. I went out of my way to do what I could to get everything. I even ended up using Serperior in my game as a main Pokemon on my team. That I used the GTS and all that kind of online trading just to get it. Now let's talk about Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, and I ended up playing, again, Pokemon Black 2. It's the sequel to Pokemon Black, so naturally. And I ended up using Tepig since I had used Oshawott and Snivy in the previous game. After Black and White, I was pumped. I was so excited for these games, and I followed it all the way through everything. I even found myself really enjoying the fact that half of the map was frozen over. It really had some mystery to it, and I just remember loving everything that I was seeing, including the Pokemon World Tournament and seeing the new trainers. That was a first. They've never done that before, so that was really cool to see them do something very different from what they had been doing for the past decade and a half or so. And honestly, I remember thinking I really liked the new male trainer way more than I like the Black and White trainer, and the female trainer as well. I like Nate and Rosa way more than I like I don't even remember their names. Black and White. Something else I remember is that I actually planned my team out way before the game even came out. I even made some eggs so that I could transfer them over and have the Pokemon come out when I wanted to play with them. That way I didn't have to wait until the very end to get whatever Pokemon might have been a late game Pokemon or even post game. Honestly, Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 solidified that Gen 5 is my favorite generation out of all of them up to this point. I can't say enough about them. I think that they are just so great, and if you have a chance to play them, I highly recommend it. I was flying high after Black and White 2. Again, favorite generation. And then, at the end of the year, they announced a new generation. Well, the announcement of an announcement, anyways. At the beginning of 2013, we had the first ever Pokemon Direct, and it announced X and Y. This was the second time that I had ever chosen a secondary version of the games. And in that, I chose Chespin. I thought Chespin was so adorable, and although Quilladin gets a bad rap, I actually like it, and as well as Chestnut as well, too. I remember waking up at 6 a.m., well, a little bit before 6 a.m. to watch the Pokemon Direct, because they had it on at a weird spot so that, at the very least, Japan could see it, and there was some weird stuff going on with that. But I remember waking up and being so excited. I was keeping up with leaks all over the place. Pokebeach was a huge leaker at that time, or at the very least, he had sources with leakers at that time. And that was crazy. It was the first time that, like, I really started to look into leaks in any capacity whatsoever. It was a super exciting time, especially since this was the first 3D games ever. In addition to that, we got a brand new typing, and I remember having conversations with my brother's friend about how it would be affected into the game, and it was an interesting time, honestly. That August, Mega Evolutions were introduced, and I was a little unsure of what I was gonna do with it. I very quickly became a fan of them. However, it was a weird and different situation, and I think a lot of people were unsure how to receive Mega Evolutions. Ultimately, I think they went off pretty well. Either way, I remember being super excited. I even took off work for the weekend to play the games, and I was super stoked. In hindsight, I remember being pretty happy with the games overall. Obviously, there's some kind of a fresh and new smell kind of for Pokemon games overall when they first come out. But when you really take a look back at them, they may not be as rosy as you thought they were. X and Y were kind of in that zone. They were fine. They were okay games. They could have been better, though, I think. They're not my favorites. They're not my least favorites, but I think they did lack in a lot of ways. Either way, they were pretty enjoyable, and I think if you do like them, and they are your favorites, then that's pretty cool. Moving on to the second Pokemon game that is not an initial title, but is a remake, and I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I do want to say a few things about it. And that's Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I remember being so stoked for these when I first found out about them. I remember being in class, well, at the very beginning of class, I had just sat down at my desk, and I was getting ready to just kind of do whatever, and I opened up my phone just to kind of scroll through before my professor got there, and then I saw it dropped, the news, and I almost fell out of my chair. I was so excited. I was all over the place. I had to kind of contain myself so that nobody saw me freaking out about it. In this game, I actually chose Mudkip because obviously I had chosen Sceptile in my original Ruby, and honestly I had used Sceptile in Black and White too, and then I had also used Blaziken in X and Y, so I wanted to use something I had not used before. Mudkip's pretty cute, honestly, right? In the end, I ended up getting Omega Ruby, and I ended up getting it digitally because I couldn't even get out of my house. There was a snowstorm, and I couldn't even do anything. All the stores were closed, and I had no choice. So I sat down with my 3DS downstairs in my family room, downloaded it, and I just couldn't wait. I even had this little coin that I got with my original Ruby to kind of make myself feel really excited. Anyway, I enjoyed Omega Ruby, and I think it has a place in everybody's standings. Now we move on to the most recent generation that is out, and that's Sun and Moon. I enjoyed Sun and Moon quite a bit, in hindsight overall. I was so excited for Pokemon Day when they announced it. I even went into my class a little late, a few minutes late anyways, because I just wanted to watch the entire Direct, and even though we just got titles, I was just so jazzed. This was the first generation that I really started analyzing leaks. Obviously, I had been in the know about rumors and leaks and whatever before, but I hadn't really started looking deeper into it before. And the leak season was really fun because the Chinese Riddler came out of the woodwork and started spewing all kinds of riddles, and that was super fun. It's also the same year that I started this channel, so I kind of have a soft spot for it as well, covering all the news and all the information. It was really fun. Of the 3 starters for Sun, I chose Litten. And one of the biggest reasons why I chose Litten was because their final evolutions leaked, and I loved Incineroar. Incineroar was so cool. I think Incineroar is just so cool. Over the course of the game, I actually started feeling a connection with my Litten, and then Torracat, and then Incineroar, and I really enjoy the entire line. It doesn't hold a candle to my Cyndaquil line, but it's still pretty cool, and I enjoy Litten a lot. The game overall became one of my favorites. It doesn't pass Generation 5, but it's definitely up there. Maybe in the second slot. It's definitely up there though. Gen 7 I really enjoyed a lot. It felt fresh and different and more robust than many of the generations prior to it, and they had gotten rid of gyms, which they really didn't because it was basically replaced with trials, which were kind of like gyms. But it was fresher and different, and I'm glad that they did it. It was a breath of fresh air. And I'm even though we're heading back into gyms, and I'm sure they'll do something interesting with them this time, I'm glad that they did take a break from gyms overall and the normal formula. I would like to see more of the trial system at least integrated into gyms and future stopgaps, I guess they are, going forward. Overall, Base Sun and Moon were not necessarily the hardest games out of all of the games out there, but they were quite enjoyable, and I found them just pretty great overall. Finally, number 3, and the final game of the side non-initial games that I have to talk about is Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts about Ultra Sun and Moon, but I've got my own thoughts, and overall I enjoyed them quite a bit. I'm not a huge fan of third versions. I was hoping that they would leave them behind, but in this case I think I can forgive them because it did some cool things. In this case I decided to go with Ultra Moon because I kind of wanted something different, and I also chose Rowlet as my starter. These games were actually pretty difficult in some spots. Obviously, it's not going to be the craziest thing, and if you over-level, you can easily beat Pokemon games. Pokemon games have never really truly been hard, but sometimes they have a little bit of a difficulty curve, and that's an interesting thing to see. Ultra Moon was one of the more tougher games that I had played, even as an adult, especially up against Ultra Necrozma. Some people had really easy times with them, but there are a lot of people that thought Ultra Necrozma was super hard, and I have to agree with those people. Ultra Necrozma had some really interesting moves tied to it, and it was pretty fast and powerful too. I can really appreciate that as a final boss in Pokemon. With that said, we have information on Pokemon Sword and Shield Generation 8. Obviously I can't be nostalgic about it because it hasn't come out yet, so I guess I'll just say these things. The reveal trailer was amazing. I think it looks amazing. I can't wait to see more, and I'm starting to think I might choose Grookey. Part of the reason I choose certain Pokemon nowadays in terms of my starters is because I used certain starters in the past. I have currently more fire starters in my list of initial starts than I do of the other ones. So mentally, I'm kind of thinking more towards the grass or water starters, and between those two, I'm thinking Grookey. Anything could change that though, because I could just end up loving Scorbunny's evolution and just going with that, and fire starters would outpace the other starters altogether. We'll have to see. I'm looking forward to more information. That's all I gotta say. That's my rundown of all the Pokemon games that I played and had thoughts about at the very least. Well, now that it's your turn, let me know down below in the comments section what your favorite starter is, what your favorite game is, and what your favorite moment was. You know my favorite moments, I guess. What's your favorite memory about all of the Pokemon games? Also remember to subscribe and leave a like. I would greatly appreciate that. Well, that's it for me. I will see you guys in another video. Bye-bye!